I'm awake. Are you? I wonder how many miles I've fallen. It seems I'll get to the center of the earth. Curious, isn't it? And really, nothing's quite impossible. Let's go now to our new episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love. And today, this is a long time coming. Shout out to Wheezy who set this up. Cory Hughes, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
I am so excited to have you here. I know you're hot off of releasing a book, right? Lee Harvey Oswald in black and white, and you also run Bloody History, and you are quite the JFK knowledge. I've listened to about, I would say, maybe 15 hours of different interviews you've done prepping for this, and amazing work. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's impressive. Definitely impressive. So I was just telling you, I got very interested in all this, the back route because of the Mormons. But before we get into all that, will you let everybody know about your book, where to find you, all about you, and what you do?
Sure, my name's Cory Hughes, and I'm a Kennedy researcher. And I have a couple books out. They're on Amazon, A Warning from History, and my new book series on Lee Harvey Oswald in black and white. I do a whole bunch of podcasts, and I seem to stay pretty busy.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm definitely sure of it. You're great. I listened to a whole bunch of your stuff and it was just so in depth and I thought, "Man, how did I not know more about this before Wheezy told me?" But thank heavens he did. Like I said, probably because JFK was kind of a back route for me. I ended up weirdly connecting to the Mormon Mafia and I was like, "What? I don't know why this is coming up, but I'm sure you do." I don't know how much you know about that, but
Well, everybody knows everybody. So
yeah.
everybody, this is all there is to it. And particularly because of World War II, everyone was in the war together. And so that's where you seem to find these connections to everybody. It doesn't even matter like what group or organization or like the entire spectrum got drafted for the war. And so by the
Yes.
60s, all the guys working in law enforcement and FBI and the CIA, they were all in the war in World War II, right? So they all know each other.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And some definitely pop up more than others. Mayhew's on Howard Hughes's whole business, and they run into Watergate with some other Mormons and some weird stuff. And Skunk Works weirdly comes up. I don't know if you know that connection, but Kelly Johnson, that was the whole like inventor kind of that branch with Skunk Works. He's a Mormon, and so is Ben Rich. And so, this is who Thane Eugene Caesar worked for it with Kelly when all that was going on and his connects with, Howard and all that wild stuff. And that's kind of where I bumped into it. And then I decided, okay, maybe I need to look at this a little more. And much to my surprise, there was a lot there. Of course, like I said, I don't know as much about Lee, and I bet you'd probably want to talk mostly about that today since you have your new book about it. Yeah, the
Well,
floor
it's
is
not
yours.
it's not really entry level Lee Harvey Oswald stuff. It's probably very advanced Oswald level work because we have this official story of Oswald, which is a blatant lie.
Yeah.
And the lies begin all the way back in 1941 when Lee was only 2 years old. So he wasn't some CIA super spy in 1941 when he was 2 years old. So what's going on here, you know?
Right,
And obviously,
right.
he's part of an intelligence family, which
Yes.
seems to be a recurring theme lately. Because it seems as though recruiting into families is the way that you can guarantee loyalty.
Yes.
That's pretty much what it comes down to, from what I've gathered.
And you think there's even two of Lee,
Hmm.
right? Two.
A
Yeah,
100%. He
that's
was part of a
amazing.
naval intelligence operation going back to the 40s, probably 41 sometime, because his mother, Marguerite Oswald, was unquestionably part of. She was in the Navy. She worked for the Navy in 1942. She admitted this in a book called A Woman in History. And so, yeah, it's never mentioned anywhere else. It's covered up in all the documents, but this one book has one page where she acknowledges she was a phone operator at the naval base in Algiers, Louisiana, in 1942. And that's the only place that little tidbit of information ever existed. And that's the beginning of it all. And that is where the cover up starts. That's where the recruitment starts. And I'm sure she got involved with intelligence because of her sister, Lillian Moret, who is unquestionably some kind of intelligence spook. Um, and so, yeah, that's how
Wow.
I feel she got involved because of her family.
Well, and this seems like you said to be a recurring theme because the other place I found a family connection, which was really strange. I was actually doing the Seance of the Nine, about this with Ruth Payne, the mother, Ruth Payne. So, uh, we know about Ruth Payne and that his wife stayed, with her and that was all set up and she's this nice Quaker lady or whatever. But her mother-in-law is very interesting. And so also named Ruth Payne. And they were at these weird seances, but it happens to be that her very best friend is Alan Dulas's girlfriend, Mary
Right.
Bancroft. And so it gets into this weird thing because, of course, her son also works for Bell Helicopter. Her husband was the inventor of the Bell Helicopter, and Michael Payne works under Dornberger. And this all goes back into this weird, like you said, family connection. I was like, what is going on over here? I wasn't even trying to study like JFK stuff at that point, but there it was.
Yeah, the family thing is definitely a theme, and that seems to have gone back like all the way to before the war, you know.
Right, right.
So it's not
Well,
CIA stuff. CIA didn't
right.
come around until 47. OSS didn't mess around with this kind of stuff. They were a propaganda unit. So who could it possibly be? It's naval intelligence.
Right. And these families like Shield's like a big one that runs into some weird families. Permindex is very interesting to me. I
Mhm.
don't know if you want to talk on that or if you have a favorite subject here, but I can just shoot off what I'm curious about if not.
Well, me personally, my favorite subject is the early life of Lee Harvey Oswald, but that is an extremely nuanced and um, complicated subject because once you come to understand that Oswald's family was involved in intelligence and it was probably naval intelligence, you then start to see the this is another weird thing that I'm trying to figure out. You start to see the rise of like the Freemason stuff in the
Hmm.
connection to naval intelligence. So there's a bunch of people in Oswald's life who were landlords, people who he worked for, various people along the way. That when you do digging into them, it turns out they were well, it wasn't just his boss at the import exporter. That guy was naval intelligence, right? He had a background of naval intelligence, and so it's that kind of thing. You start to dig into the characters in Oswald's life of people that would have been like heavily influential or even to a degree a handler. And turns out that they were not only naval intelligence, but a lot of these people are popping up in connections to the Scottish Rite, like Guy Bannister and a couple of the houses that Oswald lived at. At times, he wasn't supposed to be living there. Turns out to be owned by Freemason people, which I'm not a Freemason study guy. I just started a podcast on it to try to get to the bottom of it. But it's obvious that these people are into whatever they're into and they
Well,
believe
yeah.
into all the weird
Yeah.
stuff. And so, yeah, this theme of the for secret societies has started to pop up more so in the life of Oswald than in the Kennedy assassination directly. Although I'm sure that connection is there. But yeah, I don't understand it. I don't. I want to understand that aspect of it, and it's seemingly beyond my grasp at the moment.
I think what you're bringing up right now is such an important key because otherwise, why would Shield ever have anything to do with this guy that's making like $3 an hour, right? Like he's this millionaire. Like, why would he even care? Yeah,
He's obviously a babysitter.
right.
And Oswald, I don't. So I think there's a big difference between a handler and a babysitter. I think that Shield and Ruth Payne and they were babysitters. They weren't really handlers. When I look at who was handling Oswald, and I can tell you with certainty, a lot of the stuff he did in New Orleans after he leaves, the association with Shield and whatnot. Um, a lot of the instruction that he got came from Kerry Thornley. And this is only discovered, it's never directly indicated. You have to look at the evidence and particularly things like the Jones printing incident with the Fair Play for Cuba committee flyers. Oswald didn't print those. Those were printed by Kerry Thornley. Doug
Mm.
Jones identified Kerry Thornley as the man who had the flyers printed. And so I can tell you with certainty that Kerry Thornley, to some degree, was instructing Oswald, got him the flyers, told him to go out on the street corner, probably paid him. And so um, when it comes to the people who were actually handling Oswald, it's definitely not George de Mohrenschildt and Ruth Payne. They were just meant, I think, just to keep tabs. And I think they were specifically instructed to keep tabs, especially Ruth Payne, because Ruth Payne went out of her way to be nosy and insert herself in the life of Oswald and Marina Oswald. So, what does that tell you? She had some kind of order to babysit these people, and that's a lot of the thing. I think with these intelligence families, you will get people like Ruth Payne, who's clearly not a spy, but she is in that circle, can probably be trusted with a limited amount of information. And if all she has to do is give these people a place to live and rat on them and what they're doing, then that's a very simple job. And that's another thing, like the boarding houses Oswald was alleged to have lived at. He didn't live in any of those boarding houses. He lived at Ruth Payne's,
Mm.
which is really interesting because Ruth Payne told about a half a dozen people, including reporters and the cops, that Oswald lived there when they first showed up. It's only later that that story changed, and that he lived at the boarding houses. And so they were actually going to the boarding houses on North Beckley before they ever allegedly even were supposed to have that address. And then they get there and they don't ask for Lee Harvey Oswald. They ask for Harvey Lee Oswald, which
Oh.
is an indicator because the guy that we know as Lee Harvey Oswald is not the man born Lee Harvey Oswald. Not at all. The last time we'll ever see the real Lee Harvey Oswald is September 10th, 1959, when he's photographed at the passport office. That's it. Every
Mm.
single interaction with Oswald after that date, with the exception of a couple statements by Robert Oswald. Um, that person that we know as Oswald, throughout much of his life, introduced himself to people and to his friends and went by the name Harvey Oswald. He did not go by Lee Oswald. The evidence for this, but when I put my book out, I had 6 instances of people knowing him as Harvey Oswald. Now I'm up to at least 9 on
Discrepancies like in height and weight and all
correct.
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Well, you have to differentiate these discrepancies, and this is where it gets complicated because you have Oswald involved with a naval intelligence body identity transfer operation that goes on until he defects to the Soviet Union. That's 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 one operation that's naval intelligence. The operation of impersonating Oswald once he gets back from the Soviet Union in June of 62 is a CIA operation. It is involving Kerry Thornley and William Seymour and David Ferry and these guys who are all aware of this setup of Oswald. And you know that Oswald's being set up because none of the things that Oswald is alleged to have done did Oswald ever do. Oswald didn't go to the shooting range and shoot at other people's targets. That was William Seymour. What else didn't he do? I don't even think he worked at the book depository. Honestly,
Oh,
I've
wow.
concluded he didn't work at the book depository. There's no evidence that he was ever at the book depository. All the statements of people who, like Buell Frazier, who allegedly drove him to work that day, his statements are contradictory. They don't make any sense. And all the statements about how Oswald left the building that day, same thing. They don't make any sense whatsoever. That him fleeing on a bus in the cab and that whole story, it's totally made up. He never got on
Or
that bus.
Ruth Payne station wagon.
Right. The Ruth Payne station wagon is the
Yeah.
worst of the worst because like that station wagon that they talk about that you talking about is you're talking about a green Nash Rambler station wagon that we know was owned by Lawrence Howard. And so it's funny because what we're talking about in is particularly the book depository is I believe Oswald was being impersonated by a man named William Seymour. I have photographic evidence. I have documentary evidence which debunks the idea that he was ever stopped in the lunchroom with a Coke story, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on here. And when you break down all of the various, I'd say there's about 10 or 12 little data points that govern the book depository. And they're usually scrutinized individually. And then people don't seem to be able to figure out the individual thing, right? Like Oswald getting stopped in the second floor lunchroom while he's drinking a Coke story. That didn't happen. That's a myth. That incident actually happened between the third and fourth floors on the stairwell. And the person was most certainly not Oswald because in all the reports, that person who was stopped was wearing a light brown jacket. Okay. Um, Roy Truly will identify that person who is not Oswald wearing the light brown jacket who is stopped. He will identify him as an employee. This person then leaves the building, side of the book depository, leaves in the green Nash Rambler with Lawrence Howard. Okay. So what do we have here? We have Roy Truly identifying a man who's not Oswald as an employee in the building. This is the same person who then left the building and left in the green Nash Rambler. The timing is almost perfect. And so when you look at all these factors, you come to realize Oswald is none of these places. Oswald is not any, like all of these little incidents that people are saying there were Oswald in that building. is impossible to be Oswald because, like a logic problem, when you can eliminate a set of variables, like when you can genuinely eliminate a set of variables, that elimination of those variables will have a very, well, that will impact all the rest of everything else going on, right? And so sometimes you can eliminate some possibilities, like the idea that it was Oswald who left the side of the building and entered the Green Nash Rambler. 100% was not him. And so then you can reverse engineer that through the building up to the third and fourth floor incident, and you can even calculate the time, which that happened about 12:38. And then if that happened, then that can debunk a whole bunch of other things that were told. The whole story about Baker getting off the motorcycle, running into the book depository, and then confronting Oswald while he's drinking a Coke in the lunchroom, that story was fabricated to cover for the fact that while that was allegedly going on, they were making another arrest out in Dealey Plaza. That arrest occupied Baker's time until at least 12:36 or 12:37. And we know that because of the statements of Robert McNeil, who made a phone call from the book depository, timestamped at 12:36. And when he left, he said there's no cops in the building. Yet when Baker and Truly said they came down the stairs, the building was flooded with cops at that point. So those two stories are incongruent, which means that Robert McNeil left the building and then Baker and Truly go on their little escapade, which coincides closer to the 12:40 exit from the side of the building by the guy who's allegedly Oswald, right? So really, you need to kind of like meld all of these different data points into one continuous, non-contradicting story. And when you do that, Oswald's nowhere to be found. Period. And then you got to think, if you're going to have an assassination in a building, you're going to funnel 3 assassins into a building, help them get up to the 6th floor, and you're going to kill the power to the building so nobody can screw up the elevator. Are you just going to go to all this planning
and
then
the huge gun,
and then just let your patsy wander around the building?
Yeah.
You're just going to let Oswald wander around the building while you got assassins setting him up? I don't think so. It's the dumbest story ever. And everyone believes that Oswald worked there because no one's ever taken the time to dissect the micro details that would prove that he didn't. And then you have to wonder, well, who's the person that somebody was working there, right? Because people knew Oswald there. Well, yeah. When you go through the photographic record, the description with the brown jacket, the fleeing out the side of the building, where that Green Nash Rambler went next, it's 100% clear to me that was William Seymour who was working at the book depository, and everybody knew him there as Oswald. And then this would justify the witnesses who said that they saw Oswald driving away from the book depository, in previous to that. All the little things that don't make sense about Oswald make sense once you realize it wasn't Oswald and he was being set up and they were creating a legend, which is a false background.
Which there were like people that came forward, witnesses that were in the stairwell that said this was impossible, right? Like,
well, that's a funny story because the story is Vicki Adams. And so this is like perfect because they killed the power to the building so that the elevator could be stuck on the 6th floor. It was William Shelley, the boss of the depository, well, the manager of the employees. He killed the power because he's seen by Vicki Adams when she gets down the stairs. And this is so great because she pushes the button from the 4th floor and the elevator's not working, right? So their plan was perfect. They killed the power to the elevator because they knew that if it wasn't killed, then somebody could push the button and the elevator would come down, leaving the assassins trapped on the 6th floor. Vicki Adams pushes the button, nothing happens, which means their plan was accurate and they planned accordingly. So she takes the stairs down. She gets to the bottom of the stairs. She sees William Shelley and Billy Lovelady by the power box. She then exits through the back door. They then flip the power back on. And at that point, the assassins on the 6th floor can take the elevator to the ground floor. And then they head out the back door. Then the series of events that continues from there is all witnessed by Richard Randolph Carr, who sees 3 men exit from the book depository. One of them is a Latin. Him and another guy get into the green station wagon and they pull off. William Seymour will then walk to the railroad yards where he's captured in the Robert Hughes film. He will then walk back to the front of the book depository, go in the front door, and then while he's going in the front door, Lauren Hall, who was one of the other shooters on the 6th floor, he will then exit the back door at 12:33. Why he stayed inside the building, I don't know, but he did. We have multiple witnesses that put a man exiting the back of the depository at 12:33 p.m. Now, all their descriptions are crazy different, but I was a cop for a long time. You come to understand in high stress situations, witnesses suck. They always get things wrong. I've been to, violent crimes where witnesses were like, the dude had a green shirt and somebody else was like, no, he had a red shirt. No, he had a blue shirt. Right. And turns out he had a white shirt. Right. So like everybody gets these little details wrong. And that's the case with the guy who came out the back of the book depository at 12:33. But that person will then circle the block. the Green Rambler will then circle the block, and then that's when you have allegedly Oswald coming out of the side of the depository, walking down and getting into the Green Nash Rambler. So to me, it's a very simple series of events. And then when you follow the Green Nash Rambler to Oak Cliff, you realize that ain't Oswald, and whoever that was had nothing to do with the Tippit shooting, had nothing to do with Oswald. So it opens up a whole nother set of passages that you have to go down in order to kind of determine which the right one is. But yeah, that ends up being William Seymour, and like all the evidence indicates to me William Seymour was working in the depository as Oswald. And here's the thing: William Seymour is still alive. He's the last of the
Oh,
suspects who's still alive. He lives in Tucson or Phoenix,
wow.
and yeah, I'm not a guy who does interviews like that, so I'm not really wanting to call him or nothing. But I wish somebody else would. We're running out of time. You know what I mean?
Right. He's getting old, probably. Like, and I'm surprised because Ruth Payne just went
Hmm.
died. So it seems like, all of these people do that right before the cases start to bust open. The same thing with Thane Eugene Caesar, like with the RFK stuff. Like it just happens all the time. We see it. But to your point with this whole thing, and people will say, well, somebody hired him. Well, yeah. Who owned the book depository, right?
Yeah, so the book depository is obviously being used as a setup. The primary owner was a guy named Jack Kaysen, who was the head of the American Legion in Dallas. And as head of the American Legion, he was connected to all the other right wingers, the oil people. Like there are certain organizations that are just interconnected with other organizations, and so he knew the entire. He knew there were CIA guys, there was FBI guys in the American Legion. I mean, he knew all these people. So to me, and he was probably, if you dig deep enough, I bet you he was Scottish Rite or one of these weird organizations.
And Admiral Byrd comes up, right? Didn't he
Well,
have
he's
some
the
piece?
D.H. Byrd is the owner of the depository, and Admiral Byrd is like his brother or his cousin or something like that, which is kind of a weird kind of thing in the first place. The Byrds were seemingly very important people.
Yes.
But the ownership of the depository is another interesting thing. It was acquired at a time that is very questionable in the plot, right? Like in early 63. And then they didn't end up moving into the book depository company didn't move into that building, I think, until July of that year. They had been in another location since the 40s. And then
Wow.
after that, they ended up moving out of that building to another location again. So they weren't in the book depository building itself for very long.
It
Like
was just quick.
very
Okay.
quick, very quick. Same thing with the Daltex. A lot of the businesses at the Daltex building, as soon as the assassination happened, they ended up dipping out of there and moving into the same building on Lamar Street. So that's where you get
Wow.
all the Jewish connections to like Sam Bloom and Morris Jaffe and Zapruder, right? Like when Garrison dug into the Daltex building, he basically said, well, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. He said that it was some kind of Jewish family affair. That was the Daltex building. That's how he described it.
Hmm.
That they were all tied up in each other's business, including oil and uranium. And so one of the businesses in the building, in the Daltex building, was the Texas Uranium Mining Company. And it was an outright scam. They bought a bunch of land in Texas, told a bunch of people that it had uranium on it. They leased out all the land, made a bunch of money, and then the land turned up to not have any uranium on it. It was a
Hmm.
big scam. And that was connected. That was run out of the Daltex building. That was connected to Sam Bloom. So yeah, the Daltex is kind of like ground zero for the Dallas Jewish conspirator angle of it. And yeah, it's really fascinating. But when you get back, here's another thing I want to mention real quick about Lee
Hmm.
Oswald at the Book Depository. We have three different names on the various rosters for the Book Depository. We have the name Lee Harvey Oswald. We have the name Harvey Lee Oswald. And then the final week that Oswald allegedly worked there, the name on the payroll and duty roster was Leslie Oswald. So for some reason, the name was changed that last week that he was there, that last Monday through Friday. And that's the only one. Prior to that, it was Harvey Lee Oswald, but his original application said Lee Harvey Oswald. But that original application, I'm on the fence over on whether that's even in his handwriting. Oswald's handwriting is sloppy. It's chicken scratch, as Garrison used to call it. And it's weird because you'll see like a letter from Oswald and it'll be kind of bad, but not really bad. But then there'll be like one word that's like perfect script, perfectly neat script, and you're like, that dude could never do that in a million. Like the letter allegedly that's supposed to be like a note to E. Howard Hunt saying, "Mr. Hunt, I need you to get me out of Dallas. I need to know what's going on. I need to know more information, please." That's a fake. That's 100% a fake. I went over the handwriting with a fine tooth comb, and it's way too clean to ever have been Oswald's. So I'm starting to really get a knack for Oswald's handwriting. Actually, both Oswald's handwriting, because there's a distinct difference between Lee Harvey Oswald and the man who introduced himself as Harvey Oswald everywhere.
Mm.
Harvey Oswald's handwriting was much more. It was poorer than the original, but both of them had really bad handwriting. And another thing that kind of trips me up is their L's were kind of similar. The way they did their L's was kind of similar. But when I look at Marguerite's handwriting, it was kind of very similar to how she did it. So I can kind of see how that can kind of end up that way. But yeah, the handwriting analysis has been driving me crazy because I'll have a whole document that I'll be convinced is totally fake, and then I'll have one word that looks just like his handwriting. You know what I mean? So it's really weird.
That's hard when you're going through all those papers, I'm sure. And let alone, this thing with the birds. I mean, what happens to, I think it's his nephew, right? Isn't it? Or his son afterward. And they basically find him dead after he was missing. And I mean,
Oh, I
it's
haven't gone down that path
bizarre.
yet.
So bizarre. He just like goes to accept some, award for his dad. And he just, somebody sees him walking around an abandoned warehouse with different clothes on. And he was terrified to fly. And, he was, they killed him. I mean, he got kidnapped and was dead. And I mean, other than somebody noticed him because they were like, he looked very kept and he was with a very unkempt type looking person, almost like making sure they saw.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that is a weird one. Like seriously, like that and birds, kind of famous for hiding boxes of his stuff all over the place, which is bizarre, but cool, but bizarre, right? I don't know if you know about that, but
No,
that's a
not
weird
really.
thing he did. So I guess he kind of just hid him in all these family houses, and people have found them way later that are not the family anymore. And they're like, what, what is this weird stuff in the attic floor? But I mean, I think he was trying to protect himself. That's for sure. Who knows? But yeah, bizarre, bizarre. And then he's caught right at the theater there in Texas, and I can't remember the name of it, but that's owned by Howard Hughes, where they supposedly caught, Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't know if that's the real one or not, but
So Howard Hughes financed the Texas Theater, um, but there's more to the story than it's just a theater. It was connected to a couple other theaters, the Horowitz Theater in Houston, the Alabama Theater, which was somewhere else in Texas. There was a couple other theaters that seemingly served in some sort of covert operations role. So a lot of places back in the 60s, they people would meet in places like they would go to the movies. They would meet there. They would go to public places where people wouldn't be paying attention to them. You know what I mean? And where the people they could have a quick conversation. Like Oswald, when Oswald gets to the theater. So this is an interesting thing. So once upon a time, the Texas Theater was absolutely used for covert operations and meetings and stuff like that. That you kind of learn when you dig into Mayhew and the relationship with Johnny Roselli, and all the stuff about the Texas Theater kind of comes out, and the relationship to these other theaters. Um, but the theaters themselves at the time, when Oswald gets there, he gets there he gets there before the Tippit shooting happens, right? So there's no way he was involved with Tippit. But he gets inside the theater and he is obviously there to meet somebody. He buys a ticket. The ticket's taken from him. At some point, he'll buy popcorn. So the whole story about him sneaking in is bogus. And he will enter and he'll sit next to a guy named Jack Davis, who's like an 18-year-old kid, but there's like 22 people in the theater. It's a 900 seat theater. And the kid's like, what is this guy? What's wrong with this guy? Why is he sitting next to me? And then Oswald would get up and he did that again. He sat next to somebody else and he gets up two or three times before he sits next to a pregnant woman. And then him and the pregnant woman will leave and go to the lobby. It's at this point at exactly 1:15, Oswald buys popcorn and returns to his seat to watch the movie and the pregnant woman leaves. So he's there for covert means, right? So we have a theater started by a guy who's connected to covert operations, connected to the mafia, and then we have this. And I found some indications that these theaters, especially the Alabama theater, was frequented by Raoul, who was involved with the Martin Luther King assassination. And Raoul has an interesting backstory that connects to Jack Valenti, who was working in the White House after November 22nd. But the Alabama theater pops up, the Texas theater, the Horowitz theater. Jack Valenti worked for the Horowitz theater as a child. So yeah, it's a weird series of something going on, right? But see, I think
Hmm.
it's happened a lot. I think people had legitimate businesses that they would run that would then be able to be used for covert operations, right? It doesn't mean that the ticket takers are spies or anything like that, you know?
No, they've got to have like I always kind of since you're going down the masonry rabbit hole, I always say, of course there's porch masons because they can't give the information to everyone. They have to look like a legitimate business. And of course they do real nice things for people and run these real, they're not fake making money for not kids like in keeping it. No, they need that. They need it to make them look like a legitimate business and regular dinners and meetings and stuff that it's the same thing. What I postulate with the Mormon church is that, they have to have the 98% out there that look and act normal because they are, not because they're faking it, because they have to be. There has to be a cover, or it would be easy to spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And so when people say, "Oh, that was the nicest person ever," or whatever, I'm like, "Well, yeah, they don't know anything about this. Like the people probably at the, movie, whatever." But it seems to come up over and over again, which is weird. Yeah. Do you put any I know this is kind of a controversial one, but do you think there's any truth to some of these weird things like the Torbit report or like the gemstone file or like Project Seek or any of these weird things like that?
No, I've gone through Gemstone and all the stuff, and I've gone through the Family Jewels stuff, and the Torbit document's a propaganda document. The weird thing about the Torbit document is that it's got things in there that that person shouldn't have any knowledge of. But half the information in that document is just blatantly stupid. Like it's half actually it's half of it is so accurate you're like this is weird, creepy, accurate, and then the other half is so blatantly wrong. You're like it's an obvious disinformation document written by people who knew something. And I don't know why it was ever released. The whole thing to me is very weird. And when they do stupid things like this, they end up tipping their hand and it leads right back to them always. Like the making of the damn JFK film was the biggest mistake these people ever freaking made. This backfired astronomically. If it wasn't for that damn movie, I would never solve a damn thing because we
Right.
wouldn't have any documents. All the good documents came out in 92, 93, 94. And so, yeah, like they do things because they have to brag and then it backfires, you know? It this all connects back to the ancient weird stuff, the Freemason stuff,
Hmm.
the, the yeah.
Yeah, secret societies for sure. There's so many of them. Just when I think I've got a little bit figured out,
Yeah, me
it's
too.
so bad. Yeah, it's so bad. And I mean, I get it, but like at the same time, you're like, okay, one nation under Freemasonry is how I say things now because it's clearly taken over. I mean, obviously. So,
I don't even know where these people's loyalties are. All I know is that Freemasonry is a basically it's a Jewish Kabbalah based thing. Period. I've been reading that
mhm,
Morals and Dogma, and it's all about they keep mentioning Kabbalah and the ancient symbolism, and when you dig into like the real deep Zionist occultists, they all seem to harken back to like ancient Egypt and weird stuff, and that's the Masons do too. And so I don't understand like what they're digging for. They think that there's some ancient secrets hidden that they're going to find about the universe or something. I think
right.
all these people need to be institutionalized, maybe even sent to forced labor. I mean, seriously, these people are crazy. We can't have a functional society with these kind of whack jobs walking around.
Well, and not only Freemasonry, but Nazis, right? Like this, every time I turn around, it's both hand in hand. Like either they're Freemasons, Nazis, or they're both. And I'm like, what is happening over here? You know?
Well, a lot of people get labeled Nazis these days for various reasons that have nothing to do with like the real Nazis. So, I study World War II. I do a show on World War II. My Substack is all on World War II. And the story of World War II has been the greatest fiction that we've ever have been forced, had been forced down our throats. Just like Kennedy, The real history. They can't tell us. And the bottom line is that the story of the 20th century is the story of Israel from start to
Right.
finish. 1896 with Herzl. That's it. They hijacked human history, and everything we went through in the 20th century was because of Israel. Every war, so many things you never even heard of. Like, it's truly unbelievable. These people have been sabotaging governments and undermining cultures around the world. Well, I mean, for hundreds of years, but really the ramped up conspiratorial phase entered in 1896 with Herzl. And when you dig into Herzl, you come to realize that like there was another guy named Hirsch who had started this like I don't want to say Zionist. It was kind of pre-Zionist ideas, but it was a Jewish homeland that he made in Argentina, and he had about 15,000 colonial settlers there. And in the communications with Herzl, they openly talk about how you no, you get somebody to give up a little piece of land, and then over time you take over the whole country. Like that was they openly talked about it in their communications. You know what I mean? And that's what's happening to the world. Every single government in the West has been infiltrated by Jews, and they're actively attempting to subvert our culture and destroy it, so they can bring back their biblical prophecy shit. These people are disgustingly sick. This is the most disgusting sickness that the world has ever seen, and it's having a direct effect on society every single day. So
Right. And
it's
I
just,
guess I
just
should
disgusting.
clarify when I say Nazis, I mean the Nazi scientists, NASA, the things that actually whoever that cabal is that they're bringing in, they brought in it's weird. Like if they really were prisoners of war, like, okay, we're just going to let them go to work and buy them a new suit and like never keep tabs on any of them. And that's totally fine. That's weird.
It's really weird because like we did recruit besides the paperclip stuff with all the Nazi scientists, there was Operation Rusty where they basically recruited somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000 Nazis that they all funneled to South America. And this was all done with Reinhard Gehlen and the Operation Rusty. And so that's usually not really talked about, but the reason why did they do that? Why did they funnel all these Nazi? Well, because they understood exactly what happened in World War II, and they knew the vast majority of the Nazi atrocity stories were OSS propaganda that never happened. And so they knew that these people were like, at the time, people don't understand. Like the German army was the best in the world. They fought off six. They fought off the six largest armies in the world. For 6 years. It's
Right.
unbelievable. Like, and so they were like, yeah, these people are not our enemy, and they knew the real enemy was really the Soviet Union because communism is the true enemy. And half the people who fought in World War II knew that to begin with, right? And so, yeah, the result was at the end of the war, they were left with this mountain of propaganda that they had fabricated, but then they had all these guys that they needed to fight the Soviets. So like, so the war crimes and all that stuff, that they alleged all got swept under the rug. These people got hired and they went to government. A lot of them changed their names. Um, yeah, it's funny because nothing that we've been told about any history is true.
No, I bring it up only because Werner von Braun, he definitely was in the club because I will say this, um, he made a theological film specifically for the Mormons with the Mormons, and he was in it, and like I have photos of it and everything, and it was weird to me. I mean, it came up, and I was like, "What is this? Like, why is this here?" And it makes sense if they're in the same club. Like what form of secret society, I don't know, but the LDS people back in the day, they were very involved in that, probably still are to today, and they just hide it better. That's my guess. But they're very all about, protect Israel. Like I grew up hearing, we have to protect Israel. Like everything is about that. And so it's a weird dichotomy. And I'm not saying the real Jewish people, like going back to Adam, if that's not the same thing as what we're talking about, I
No, it's
don't
not.
think.
No, it's not.
And people don't understand that because they hear Jew and they shut off. It's
Right.
immediate.
Immediate.
But we're talking about Caesarians, this Khazar
Right.
nation, and it all got confused, and they did that on purpose. I mean, they did that on purpose, moving them all.
Right. Like 100% of the culture is stolen. Like there's no aspect of the culture, the food, the language, you name it. It's all stolen. Hebrew what they speak today isn't even real Hebrew. It's some bullshit they made up.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's Zionism to the core, to be quite frank. And, it's been infiltrated, and now people are so shut down on it that you can't. You can't have a conversation. And I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. I don't mean anyone should kill anyone, but also we have to look at the whole picture. Like, this is not what they say it is. What was the Balfour document? Like, what was happening there? Like, what were they doing then? They were covering a lot of stuff up with that because they didn't even have to prove anything. So yeah.
Yeah, the whole origin story is crazy because it never was meant to be in Palestine. The original Zionist Congress didn't even talk about Palestine. They talked about literally Madagascar and other places where they could get Patagonia, places that they knew that they could just go buy land, right? And so I don't know what happened to make them change the story because you got to think these early Zionists are atheists. So how do these atheists do things because God said so? I don't really understand that at all. It's manipulation.
Their God is a different God. Usually, if you get deep down into the secret societies, they definitely do believe in a God. It is not the regular Christian God that people
Right.
speak of.
Most
Yeah.
of them, I find it all seems to point to Luciferianism,
Yep.
which is not
Yep.
Satanism, but
Nope.
it is. Yeah, we're run by weirdos. Our whole country, the whole world is run by a bunch of
I
weirdos.
love that. That's great. Yeah, it's very much, with theosophy. You see this whole theosophy movement, Abraxas. I just did a big show on Abraxas and these different esoteric ties with all of these different people. And every time you turn around, like I'll give you an example, the Mormon church was heavily in debt and they made some deals. And guess who with? The Bambergers. Well, what the heck is going on there? Were they infiltrated as well? Because I have actual people from the 1800s that said they were. So, like, at what point is all of it not visible? Yeah, we don't go through and think of Mormon people with Jewish people, right? But if you get deep down into Joseph Smith's works, he's studying Hebrew and he's talking Kabbalah. Like, I'm sorry, that's what it is.
It seems as though like all of the it seems like these Abrahamic religions, which most people, like most Christians, believe that stuff and that's their thing and that's cool. But it seems as though the people who are at like the deep center of all of it are not really the religion that they say, and that they're digging for like these ancient secrets. That's what the fucking thing looks like. And I'm like, what is going on here? Why does ancient Egypt hold so much symbolic importance to these people? Because a lot of it comes back to the ancient Egyptians.
Yes,
And even
100%.
like
The
and
right
even
of
like
Mizraim. Yes,
and the
it goes way
Aztecs
further.
too.
Yeah.
And even the Aztecs and some of the Aztec symbology has kind of come into the Freemason world. And I'm like, what?
Yep.
That's crazy to me. I mean, so they're looking for something. They're looking for answers. I don't know what kind of
They
answers
want to live forever. They want to live forever.
That's crazy. I've been around about 50 years and I don't want to live forever. Jesus Christ. I'm like,
Me
geez,
either.
I got 30 years to go. God, it's a long ass time.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm with
I don't
you.
under,
I think that's wild. Yeah.
so none of them, what these people, none of their behavior makes any sense to me. They're digging for some sort of weird, and see, all growing up, I was like, there's no way that smart people who run the show can believe in this dumb shit. There's no way, but they do. They genuinely do, and I don't get that. I don't know if it's early childhood grooming or what the deal is, but
Well, they always say occultism. And when I say that, and especially for your studies, look into the Rite of Mizraim. This is the Memphis Rite. This is older than Scottish Freemasonry. And they're a practicing order and they practice magic, Solomonic magic, which is very old. And people always say, well, it's dangerous, or, Enochian magic is another one that comes up. Don't do it. Even I'm a magician now and it's terrifying. I'm like, okay, so why do people still do it? Because it works. It works for whatever they know. And this comes up far back or clear up forward to Damien Eccles. It comes up and you look at it and you go, yep, he got out of prison for something that was clearly, very sus. And I'm not going to judge one way or the other there, but if I was a betting girl, I think he should probably still be where he was. But we see it over and over and over again. And what does he reference coming out of prison? Joseph Smith. And I about dropped my tea. Like, I was like, what is happening here? But you're right. It's constant. It just is. Yeah. I don't know. And then Howard Hughes's crazy activity, not cutting his hair, not cutting his nails. Well, if you get into, this whole thing in the Golden Bough, where the kings didn't do that. They weren't supposed to. It was supposed to be stolen from them when they slept. And also their feet were never to touch the ground with bare feet. And what would he do? Put tissue boxes on them. It's very weird, but it makes more sense when you look at it. Like, what did they do to make him think and believe maybe these certain things, right? And then they take over his whole everything,
That's
basically.
weird. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Golden Bough. It was a key component that I never knew. And then all of a sudden I did a show and I was reading about it and I was like, whoa, okay, this makes a lot more sense when you look at it that way. But yeah, it was wild. Do you think Onassis had anything to do with this whole situation? Because I totally do.
Yeah, so NASA, you got to think originally, like they weren't going to space when they freaking founded NASA, and so NASA was an intelligence front. I mean, there's been articles written on this. That's where the $400, toilet seat comes from. Um, all that, all that was money to goes to black ops, and so to me, them like faking the moon landing and all that stuff is par for the course because that's what they were. They were part of a covert operations unit. I don't even know what the hell they do today. We got SpaceX. What do we need NASA for, right? Like, I don't understand that's another thing. I don't understand like the handoff in our space world. Space is like we're not going to get into space, but space is weird, right? So,
It is weird. Yeah, I
um,
agree.
this handoff to private space exploration, uh, it makes me wonder if remember like all the space shuttles and stuff that was all outsourced to Boeing and Lockheed and all that. Like NASA never really did shit, right? Did they?
Hmm.
Like they never really did anything. And now we got Elon Musk sending people to space, and it's like, well, what the hell was NASA doing with all our money that whole time?
Right. Yeah.
So
Funneling it. And funny enough, then he changes his name to X, which is esoterically important. And then we still see this commonality with the secret society stuff. And you have to step back and say, every person that supposedly has been on the moon is either a Mason or a Mormon. And people can look it up. Like it's wild to me that it infiltrated to that level. And we see it time and time again. And then their weird holdings, the airships that just disappeared, their weird holdings on helium is strange. Like all of this, UFO stuff, basically, which, some of these key players in this assassination come up in Maury Island. I mean, yeah, aliens for sure part of this. I don't know this agenda. I don't know if it's real or a cover or more money. It's
yeah,
strange.
I mean, he seems to pop up in the background a lot. Um, there's some connections with him through TWA to some important people, particularly Jack Valenti.
That's what I
But
was going for. Yeah.
there's like a lot of people in the background. Here's the thing. There's this thing that I call the conspiracy layer, where really it doesn't matter what the hell went on. You got your guys on the ground who pulled the triggers. You got guys who handled them. You have a pretty, to me at least, a fairly unobscured line of our people on the ground to the people that matter. And so I just find that there's this like conspiracy layer that really they didn't give the order, they didn't pull the trigger. They might have had some kind of involvement in money or just communication, like the oil people and like the Texas oil people and like all these and people talk about like Harriman and people talk about Brown and Root and like all these people, even to some degree Dulles and Angleton. I really don't. You're never going to find any documents. There's no. We know they're all guilty. So I just put them in what I can call the conspiracy layer, which is this layer that exists between the guys I can say gave the order and the guys at the bottom who pulled the triggers. That, for the most part, have really nothing to do with nothing. So many people try to put like the assassination on the oil people and the bankers and all that stuff, and I'm like, they were probably aware, but were they shot callers? Did they give any orders? No. Did they funnel some money? Possibly, right? And that's all these. That's what these people did at this level, right? Because when it comes down to like who gave the orders, you can pretty much say the JM Wave guys from the CIA who are stationed in Miami and their relationship with Angleton and Dulles, which is the Permindex connection. And so that's really,
Yes.
you don't really need much. You got Permindex, Dulles, Angleton, JM Wave, and then you got New Orleans. You don't have to go down this conspiratorial path of every single one of the oil guys and the bankers. And, that's a dead end road. And that's where I see so many people like focus on that, what I call the conspiracy layer. If you're focusing on the conspiracy layer, you're wasting everyone's time because you're never going to get anything. And we already know they're guilty. The depths of their guilt we'll never know. So why waste any time on it? spend
Yeah.
time on the things we can actually do something about. Trying to pin Angleton or Dulles to this. Obviously, they're the shot callers. They knew nothing happens without their, especially Dulles. But Dulles was good at maintaining distance. He sat in his office in Washington, D.C. The guy didn't have any hands on anything. He had people who gave him the information, like Shackley, like Angleton, like Morales, and all these guys. So he didn't have to get his hands dirty and he didn't have to know the details. But it's weird because he did know details. There's times during Warren Commission testimony where Alan Dulles stops the proceedings to take a break, and he takes these breaks at like weird times, like asking Robert Oswald about stuff that went on in New Orleans in 1954, when I can tell you there's like an informational vortex of contradiction in 54. When Robert Oswald starts talking about that, Dulles cuts him off and says, "Hey, let's take a break." So it's like Dulles knew things, right? And that he knew when to call testimony and to have it stopped. All right, so he knew a lot more than we let on. Why he knew this stuff, was he briefed? I don't know, but you've got a major cover up of the Oswald life pre or the early life stuff of Oswald, most particularly from like 45 to 56, and so there's a lot of information that the FBI knew things they shouldn't have known about Oswald's life, about jobs Oswald had that didn't appear in the record anywhere, that even people who employed Oswald didn't know that he had worked there, like, so they knew things about Oswald's early life that they never should have known. They knew about addresses that they never should have known about. So they knew a lot. And when you get through that, when you actually come to understand that there were two Oswalds and they were covering that up, as you go through the Warren Commission testimony, you catch the fact that they're asking questions to determine which Oswald was known by the witness. Did the guy was he left-handed or was he right-handed?
Oh.
Things like that. Okay, so you knew Oswald and you said that he had a scar on his left arm. Is that right? So they'll ask questions to people to find answers to questions that seem kind of irrelevant. Why did they call in anybody who knew Oswald in the 40s? What's that got to do with anything? They called in the Mr. and Mrs. Roach, who were allegedly Oswald's babysitters in 1941 into 42. Why? Why did they call them in? What could they possibly tell you about the Kennedy assassination? And then when you dig into those records, you find that the whole stories fall apart. The addresses are wrong. People are living in places at times they shouldn't be living there. Marguerite Oswald is giving addresses to places on applications that we can say she didn't live there for another 6 months, right? Like, so we've got a lot of weird stuff. And they were all aware. They knew this. The Warren Commission knew it all. And they were covering up for this naval intelligence operation that had been going on since God knows when.
So I have one last person to ask you about, and then I'll stop on the whole cabal people. But I have to ask it. What about Jackie? Because she's in with George DeMoran-Shields since she's a child. She's getting horse lessons from him, calling him uncle. You think she liked Onassis before, and he kind of screwed her over with those baby deaths. I don't know. You think she was a scorned woman and had some of this?
No.
Okay.
No. She always came off as there's like women in politics who are like the first wives kind of thing are a weird. They're a weird bunch in and of themselves. They're almost groomed to be a first lady, almost, it seems like, So whenever I see women like that in these stories, I always wonder what's going on. But no, I don't. She seems to be a victim of circumstance.
Okay. I was just curious. And I think you're right. Her family's well connected with Society of Cincinnati. Your sister goes on to be a princess. I mean, yeah, obviously they're grooming high society wives, and what that entails, I do not know, but I'm sure it entails a lot, don't ask questions and go shopping, or I don't know what, what color shoes to wear to what meeting. But, she seemed a little smarter than some because she did know, certain things like different languages and whatnot. And people did seem to like her, but also she was very money focused. I mean, we do know that. So, yeah. And then on the financiers, or why you think he actually was murdered, you bring up, naval intelligence. He's the first president we'd had who really wasn't on the whole need to know situation with the alien agenda with NASA. I mean, he could kind of say, no, you're going to tell me this, and I know blah, 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 because he comes from an intelligence background and his father was super involved in both sides of the coin, we shall say, with the Bronfmans. Plus, he used to be, ambassador. So over in England, like that's really interesting. Most people don't even know that. You bring that up and people look at you like you're weird. I mean, I'm like, no, it was real.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kennedy, his father basically made promises to everybody, and he made promises to the mob. He made promises to the damn Israelis. There was an account that I read of Joe Kennedy meeting with a bunch of the B'nai B'rith guys in a hotel room and making them a bunch of promises. And then Kennedy finds out about it and he was pissed because his dad was signing checks. So he had no intention on ever cashing. You know what I mean? Like it
Yikes.
was not a good situation for him. And he burned every bridge basically. He got the mob to help him steal the election, which he did. Kennedy never should have been president. I mean, that's a reality. I hate to say it, but
No, it's
Kennedy never
real.
should have been
Yeah.
president. I don't know what the world would be like if Nixon had been there instead. I don't know. Because he was a scumbag. I mean,
Yeah. He was making deals with Howard Hughes over in the corner for his brother for like, what was it? $500,000.
yeah. So I don't know how the world would have turned out. But Kennedy's father's actions, I think played a huge role in his death ultimately. Because if he hadn't pissed off the mob, would they be willing to kill him? And no, I think the answer is no. They wouldn't have taken that risk. But due to the fact that he had burned them, it had like become personal. So yeah, um, if the mob wasn't involved, man, this thing never would have got pulled off. Like, I'm sorry, the CIA at the time, um, were not. I don't believe the CIA was in a position to be able to pull this off by themselves. This isn't like the jungles of Vietnam. This is downtown Dallas, and you're going to go to people who have experience in knocking off big shots in public, and the mob did. The mob knocked
Mhm.
off Anton Cermak in Miami. They knocked off Huey Long. There's a bunch of other ones too that most people don't talk about and that I'm only even vaguely familiar with. But the mob has this whole setting up a patsy and using shooters who are not the patsy, and the whole thing had been done by the mob before, and so I'm pretty convinced that that's the main reason why they used the mob. And then what did the mob do? The only mob-based shooters they had were like Dave Yaris, Robert Bernard Baker. They only had two or three. The vast majority of the guys who were shooters in Dealey Plaza were from New Orleans. They were New Orleans based. David Ferry's whole clique.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
why. This is why, like, the party with Perry Russo is like so important because this is where he says that Oswald allegedly was at this party where they talked about killing Kennedy. So just because of that statement alone, most people disregard the testimony of Perry Russo. But once you realize that the man he was describing wasn't Oswald, and that it was a guy named Kerry Thornley, the entire damn assassination falls into place. People made fun of Perry Russo because of his testimony. Basically, they gave him a picture of Oswald, and they said, "Is this the guy that you saw at the party?" And he took a magic marker and he drew a beard on the picture, and he goes, "This is the guy that I saw."
Oh, wow.
Right. So it was not Oswald, it was Kerry Thornley. Kerry Thornley's a dirtbag, and it's a long story, but ultimately that's the person he saw. And once you understand those relationships between Kerry Thornley and David Ferry and Clay Shaw, all of Dallas falls into place. The Tippit shooting falls into place. Everything falls into place once you kind of understand those relationships. Um, but yeah, it's mostly New Orleans. And most of the,
Right.
like, it's funny because the JFK movie, which is really a propaganda film, um, it really hit close to home on some of like who the actual shooters were. It talked at the very opening scene. You have the Rose Sheremy incident with the woman getting thrown out of the car, saying they're going to kill Kennedy. Very much real. Um, you've got the David Ferry stuff. David Ferry's in the office talking about how all he wanted to do was be a priest, but he had a weakness. This is unbelievable. Like some of the stuff they put forth in that movie was incredible and accurate out of the documents, and the other half of it was just straight out the window. They made the shit up out of thin air, right? But the stuff that was in the movie that was accurate was extremely accurate, and it goes to show how close they were because Jim Garrison had David Ferry in his office on Monday morning or Monday afternoon,
Mm.
actually. So within 3 days of the assassination, they had one of the shooters in their office, one of the masterminds in Jim Garrison's office. And then what happened? The whole thing got obfuscated by the CIA and the FBI and the Secret Service. FBI and Secret Service came out and said David Ferrie had nothing to do with this. Like,
And
really? How
all
do you
the
know that?
church, their little fake church that they had where he was this fake priest, and then everybody starts dropping dead. Like
Yeah, the
that
fake
was
churches were all
wild.
child trafficking operation through the Civil Air Patrol, and yeah,
They
that's
were
a
just cleaning, maybe they were just cleaning house in case, like, I don't know, but a lot of people dropped dead from that. People were like called in, I guess, from this fake church, and they were like, we need to talk about things, and then they're just dead, the people that didn't show up that were like, nah, I'm good.
the
They
fake
made it.
churches is a big thing with the CIA, and so that was all connected to Jack Martin and Dave Fred Lee Chrisman and Thomas Beckham and Bob Lavender and all the guys up in who after the assassination end up in Washington State. And they had some operation there going on where they were making fake diplomas and fake degrees and fake churches. And I don't know why. Beats me. What is the CIA doing with all these fake organizations? Well, the fake churches, I can say, were money laundering operations because they don't pay tax
Mhm.
on it. But I don't know what they were doing, faking diplomas and stuff, right? Like I got a
Wow.
copy of Thomas Beckham's book, and in the back of it, he's got like print copies of all the different diplomas that he had, and like they were all fake. They were all made by this little fake diploma ring.
You're like, I want one like that. Not even hard to do. 10 minutes
Right,
later, I
right. I'm a
got it.
PhD all of a sudden.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, that would be nice, right? Oh boy. So ultimately, who do you think what I know the answer, but I don't know. I don't know if you want to share that because it's in your book,
Oh,
right?
I don't
Like,
care.
okay. So ultimately, who do you think is our guy? Like,
Well, you got a lot of guys. But you got like Jack Valenti and David Ferry and all the Cubans and all that stuff. So, um, but that stuff is all the details on that are all in my book. It's very complicated to explain otherwise. But you have to understand nobody is who they say they are. Everybody is part of some secondary organization, whether it's like the Freemasons or some other group or um, there's more to the story. Like the story we've been told is the first layer. You have to get past that in order to get to anything else, you know.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're on the right track with these secret societies because that and the Bay of Pigs and all these players, like you just see it fall into place with certain branch outs. Not that that's the only thing, but you just see it right spider out basically. I mean, yeah, he pissed a lot of people off, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
All of it is related to these very secret societies and or churches, which is why I was kind of like, that's weird. And you always want to look back at it with, the Mormons and say, well, maybe it was just Howard Hughes, but I found other connections.
Well, another
So
thing that's interesting is that in the early life of Oswald, until, all the way till the time he leaves for the Marines in '56, um, he lived in extremely close proximity to either an insane asylum or an orphanage,
oh, wow.
and all of them were Lutheran church based. So that I think is weird. There's a Lutheran church connection to the Oswald thing. His mother said that they were Lutherans, but they never really ever went to church. So there was some reason they kept getting support from the Lutheran organizations, the orphanages and all that kind of stuff. And then he allegedly went to the Trinity School, which is a Lutheran school in New York, but he never actually went there. But for some reason, the Lutheran stuff always popped up, but they never went to church. They were not church-going people, but they clung to this, we're Lutherans, which
Mm,
seems to have some sort of relevance somewhere.
right, right. Or maybe it's their way of funneling money to her, but they could have taken better care of them if she's in on it. Jeez.
That's another thing. Like a lot of these people get hung out to dry. So after Robert Oswald dies, Lee's father, she gets about somewhere between five and $10,000, which in 1939 is a buttload of money. That's got to be like 150, $200,000 to today's money. And so she doesn't work at all after Oswald's born, and then that era where she has a whole bunch of money flows right into this time period where we can't say where she was. But another thing about Marguerite Oswald, um, her whole life, she's crying that she's broke. She's poor me. She's She had to have Lee get out of the Marines to come help her because she has no money and all this stuff. This is all lies. At the time, Oswald allegedly left the Marines to go help her with the discharge stuff because of the hardship. She had already settled with the King Candy Company where she had an accident and a box fell on her head, and she got like $2,800. And this is in 1959. Jesus
Nice.
Christ. What do you got? Like, and when you look at her life, she had rental property income. She had all kinds. She had alimony for 18 years from Edward John Pick, and so she's crying broke. She's like handing her kids off to the orphanage because she has no money. But this whole time, she has money.
Hmm.
She had money. She's a psychopath. She didn't want nothing to do with her kids. Kept dumping them in the orphanage. I mean, she's the perfect person to be picked up by intelligence. Because really,
Do you
you
think
could
she
tell.
was still going on missions when she would drop these kids off?
I don't think it's as simple as it's not as complicated as she had to go on missions. Some
Mm,
people just need to take care of their kids who are going to be a spy
yeah.
later.
Yeah.
That's all she had to do was raise her damn kids.
Right.
Raise her
Yeah.
kids who were obviously put into this program at a very young age because there's no possibility that there's two people of the same name who go by the same name, allegedly same birth date. Sometimes it's off by a date though, by one day. Half the documents say Oswald's born on October 18th, but then you have a handful that say October 19th. And that
Mm.
19th is always linked to the guy who we know as Oswald, who went to jail on November 22nd. So you see a lot of weird obfuscation over the paperwork and connected to all this stuff. But
Wild.
yeah, it's a wild story. And I don't know. I wish I could get to the bottom of it. Why? I've kind of figured out the how they did things, but the why
Right.
always escapes me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I'm not like you where I'm digging down certain roads, but like it always seems kind of strange that this, like you said, everybody knows everybody. But my husband one day asked me, he said, "So who do you think it was?" And I said, "It's all of them. It was everyone." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, this guy connects to this guy, connects to this guy, connects to Permindex, connects to Mormons." And he's like, "Are you okay?" Like he literally was like, you need to quit reading for a while.
There
Like
was
I think
like
you've
there were
gone
probably
crazy.
hundreds of people who knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was
Hundreds.
so
Like,
many.
mhm.
Yeah, it was weird. And I was like, well, and then they start offing everyone, and there's all these back and forth, like, oh, well, this guy came after them because, Onassis was mad that they did this to Hoffa, and Hoffa's entangled, he's entangled with the Mormons because they're using this pension fund that he was over to fund all these purchases to make Las Vegas go corporate. And so it was weird. Like all the way around, you just run into all these things that, I mean, I guess they have a little to do with it, but like then they go off on these crazy stories of
Right?
their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I don't know. And then we are into Freemasonry and secret.
And so it's you kind of got
Yeah,
to draw some definitive lines on where you stop because if not, next thing you know, you're going to be looking into the freaking pyramids and you're just trying to solve Kennedy. You know what I mean? It's like Jesus Christ.
that's the truth. That's
Yeah.
the truth.
That's
Oh
how I
my
knew I was off the
gosh.
deep end when I got into all the occult stuff and it's finally in the Kennedy led to the occult stuff and I'm like Jesus, this is
Well, I
I'm
think you're
like
not on the wrong. I think you're on the right track because when you get into RFK and Sirhan and Amork, they say he was involved with Amork, that he had this guy, that this goes into some weird stuff that he met Manly P. Hall, that Manly P. Hall was a good friend of the mayor that testified against him. That gets pretty weird really quick. And the guy that supposedly was his like mentor, this Rafke guy, he's a ghost. I can't find crap other than they
That's
mention
how you know when
him.
people are
Yeah.
guilty. Like there's some people you can't find anything on. Like when you
Mm-mm.
go through the assassination story and you come to realize who the shooters were and what surrounded them, you realize those are the people that there's nothing on. Um, there's a guy named Lauren Hall who I put on one of the shooters at the sixth floor, and he was running with Lawrence Howard and William Seymour, and Lawrence Howard and William Seymour were smart. They didn't say a damn thing. They never said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Like that was their whole thing. I was in LA. I don't know what you're talking about. Damn, Lauren Hall kept giving interviews and kept running his mouth, and then he talked to the newspaper, and then he talked to everybody, and it's like you got a 50-page interview of that guy where he contradicts half the stuff he said before. And it's like some people just kept running their freaking mouth. You know what I mean? And it was like, shut up already. It was like, it was like some guys, like I look at like Lauren Hall and they had to go out of their way. to
I'm
protect this guy.
innocent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he said so much stupid stuff that you could obviously connect him to everything, and then they were like, "No, no, shut up," right? Like,
Well, then they just let him go because then he looks
mhm,
nuts, right? Like if
right.
he's contradicting himself, that's good.
And the guys who are the real problems end up going into the mental institution for a little bit, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so
Decompress.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all these the story itself really isn't as complicated as they've tried to make it out to be. And like when you have that in like the JFK film when they ask Ferry who shot the president, Dave, and he's like, "Oh, it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Even the shooters don't know." That one line right there was the whole point of the movie, to confuse everybody and make it seem like nobody's ever gonna know. And that's bullshit.
Well, and
That is BS.
now we are doing it again. Not that it hasn't been done before, but we're coming hot off of a couple days ago with the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm watching it happen all over again. But now it's way worse because now we have AI modifying everything. We have no idea what videos are real, what videos are fake, what's what anymore. Like at least then you had what you had even if you didn't have a lot. It was probably real. Like what you did get other than these little, reports or whatever, but you didn't have the point where you could make a whole movie and make it look like these people, right? Like it's weird. I don't know. I felt like it was very reminiscent. It was almost to charge the house again because 9/11 was the next day and it's been a long time and people are settling down from that as well. Not that it's gone, but just saying it's faded a little bit, you know. It's like they wanted to re-traumatize everyone and give them a new rabbit hole to go down why they release Epstein stuff, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't understand the modern era. I don't try to attempt to. I don't ever do political commentary really on what's going on because after 68,
Yeah,
nobody has a fucking clue what's going on. Nobody.
right,
The whole world went to
right.
hell in a handbasket. Kennedy got killed. Israel took over our country. And everything else has been. See, when I look at this new shooting, it's like you start to see some details coming out. We obviously the story doesn't make sense. And one thing that most people don't realize is that they start to think that they can make some conclusions. 100% of the information that we've gotten has been gotten from the sources who are going to fuck with the information. So like we know
Exactly.
nothing. Nobody can even pretend to know anything.
Right.
Um, the best source of any information is from the various cell phone shots that come out.
Like the random people that were
Yeah,
like at the place. Yeah.
right.
I think so too, because like some of the other ones, you'll watch a same slide and exactly different than what somebody else has posted that was like there or whatever. But they're already trying to make him into very similar. I mean, I've seen him put up there with prophets and all this stuff. And look, I didn't know one way or another how I feel about the guy beforehand, but I do know this is, we're never going to know. It's just a new rabbit hole. It's like, oh, they're not into this anymore. JFK files are released. Speaking of, I don't know what you thought about that. Nothing. Yeah, I don't
They're,
know.
they're garbage. I don't give a damn about the JFK files at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
Like
that's how I
people
felt.
who still cling to give us the files, like have battered wife syndrome. Like they've been abused by the powers that be
Oh
forever,
my
and they're like,
gosh.
please give me some more. Like, what are you talking about? Shut up with your
Hit
documents.
me
Like,
again, Ike. Yeah.
right, 100%.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
and like you got people like Jefferson Morley like leading the charge for that stuff, who I'm convinced is a gatekeeper. You know, so.
Yeah, as
I'm
they
really
are.
disappointed. So you got this like Luna is doing this like commission thing. It's a joke. Like, and I don't even know if she's a useful idiot or what. Like, I'd like to have a conversation with her. Because she keeps thanking Jefferson Morley on the freaking X, and it's like that guy's never solved anything in 40 years. Why you keep thanking this guy? He's never done shit. Like his work is
Right.
trash. His work
What are
is
we
trash.
what are we thanking him for? Like, please
Right.
answer.
I
One
could write
question.
volumes upon volumes about how his work is trash and never solved anything. But yet they still go to him like he's the expert. Why? Because this is how the CIA operates. He swears to me he's not CIA. And he says, I reject that entirely. I reject it. I'm CIA. And I'm like, oh, you're just a private citizen gatekeeper. I get it. So,
Which is worse, right? Probably. I mean,
yeah.
that means you're willingly doing this, not that you got orders. That means you're
Right.
willingly choosing to live like I would almost rather be the other way around, you
There's a lot of
know?
fragile egos in this Kennedy world. Like James D. Eugenio is one of the worst. I mean, he's been doing this the longest of anybody, and the guy sucks. His work is terrible.
Oh man.
So, and he's never
I
solved
don't know
anything.
him.
You have
Yeah.
researchers who like pull up like details, but then you have people who try to connect dots, and that's what I do. I try to connect the dots. And like most people can be really good out there at digging up the information. There's a lot of guys who are
Hmm.
great at digging up data, but nobody ever tries to put it together, or they can't, or it doesn't make sense, or they don't understand how this little tiny incident over here has to do with this incident that happened 10 years ago, right? Like there's little tiny things that they just miss, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think you're on the right path though with this whole, weird, not religion per se, but definitely like Freemasonry. There's answers there. There's answers in theosophy, Freemasonry, all this stuff. And I think, ultimately, I think you're right. I think they're trying to bring about the end of the world on purpose.
Mhm.
We know this. Zionism is just that. They want to hurry up because there's a push now because they're getting old. These guys that have been hanging on, the old timers, not the newer ones, they are literally like, hey, my time's almost up. Like, let's get a move on here,
Right, right, right. That's a really, really great
Yeah.
point. That's a really great
Yeah.
point because these are the guys who've been funneling the money into these elections to get something done. They are done or die, and they want to make sure that they can have their
They want their
liberal whatever.
cake. Yeah,
Yeah,
they want their cake. They're mad about it. I would be pissed if that
you
were
see,
me.
these people just got screwed by their ancestors because modern day white Jews are the descendants of European converts. It's well documented. The conversion of Jews, you can trace them all to a group of about 350 people in the Rhineland. And
Mhm.
they came from the Khazar Empire. It's funny how
Yes.
the Jewish story starts in the 1200s. No, sorry. Um, but yeah, so the idea that these people have any claim to that part of the world is to me is utterly ridiculous, and it's just proof that we live in a clown world, like from top to bottom.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you think about Trump and Netanyahu and all this weird stuff? And like,
Oh, well, he's bought. I mean, okay, so Israel killed Kennedy and took over our country on November 22nd. I mean, that's all there is to it. They implanted their
Mhm.
puppet, Lyndon Johnson, who never won a fair election. He was definitely Jewish. He was raised Jewish, and like many other Jews, when they get into politics, they're just not Jewish anymore.
Mhm.
That's the same case with Lyndon Johnson. And so, yeah, like I was hoping that Trump would be different because Trump is most certainly destroying the old establishment. That is a
Right.
fact. Is he replacing it with like the good guys? I don't think so. Um,
No.
it's it's because these guys seem to have their own opinions on how to do things, which are blatantly contradictory to what they claim to believe. Like the idea that I don't give a damn what you say or what you believe. The idea that they would pull your passport as an American citizen for speech, like fuck right off. Like it's so blatantly unconstitutional that it was pulled from the amendment. They knew it. They pulled it. But every single person who puts up an amendment like this should be fucking hanged as a traitor to this country. I'm sick of this shit. Like if it was up to me, I'd round up all of Congress and hang them. And if there's some good ones in there, sorry, collateral damage.
Right. Well, and it's not, I mean, it's not constitutional. We live by this thing that nobody wants to, really look at anymore, or they confuse it and then we argue about Roe versus Wade forever. And as a woman,
Right.
like I get it, but here's the thing, it's not in the Constitution. And I'm sorry for that, but that's how it is and that's the
Right.
law. Like that is the law. I'm not saying right or wrong on the whole agenda, but I am telling you that is not in the Constitution because they didn't even think like that back then. They weren't even
Right.
thinking about that. They weren't thinking
Right.
about women. Like,
Right.
certainly not families. Like they didn't care. They wanted their guns and all this other stuff. So whatever. They protected what they protected. We have to go off of the old thing. Like we can't change it. Like you can't change the Constitution, but certainly I think at least we should uphold it. Goodness,
Well, one of the things it seems like under the 4 years under Biden, they went so outside the law. They derailed the Constitution 100%. And they created problems that I don't know how you fix constitutionally. How do you fix the immigration problem constitutionally? It's not possible. It was a rigged game. And so, how do you fix that? You're going to
I,
have to step on some constitutional toes, and I hate to say that, but um, and then you're going to have to like the whole immigration thing brings up a lot of other legal problems. It brings up like Terry v. Ohio. Like in order to stop someone on the street, they have to be alleged to have committed a crime, gonna commit a crime, right? How do you tackle the immigration problem if the person isn't alleged to have committed a crime, other than if they're here illegally? And if they're here illegally, that's the crime, but you don't know that until you stop them. It's a catch
right,
22. It's a problem
right.
that you can't fix because they illegally brought these people here. And how do you legally extract them? It's virtually impossible. And so to fix a problem like that, you got to go off the rails. There's just no way around it. And I hate to say it, I hate to see people getting grabbed off the street, but I don't see another goddamn solution. I mean, they wrecked the country so bad that the Constitution will pay a price in order to get it back on track. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's true. I don't see
But
an
then they'll
alternative.
use it. Yeah, then they'll use it for everything else. Like,
You're correct, right? So we have a
yeah,
problem that like there's no right answer here. There just straight up is no right answer here.
no,
Um,
it's messy. This
and
has
this is
been
the kind of
messy.
world, right, messy, and this is the world situation. This is a situation that created Hitler in the first place. Literally,
Hmm.
this is the situation that was going on in Nazi Germany in the late teens after the war and early 20s leading. This is America today, and it was all done on purpose then. It's being done on purpose today, and that's how. And they're all shocked that everyone's seemingly becoming a racist these days. It's unbelievable. Like the cause and effect thing is people can't expect to have their homes intruded upon and not have some sort of visceral reaction, whether
Hmm.
logical or not. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
so,
Well, I mean, the whole thing is like this is impressionable on people. Like, for example, Howard Hughes was extremely racist. Also, he saw this horrible thing happen when he was young, and they had this big, he went to some rally or something, and all these black people killed all these white people, and he saw it, and it messed with him like for the rest of his entire life. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing.
right.
I'm not. I don't think racism should even be a thing. But here's the problem. We have to have law, like we have to have order. And when you don't have law and order, that's where it becomes a huge problem. And people start taking it out on race instead of the problem because they don't know how to fix the problem. That's the truth.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
see like, oh, this color person did this bad thing to me. So now that's that,
Right. Right.
and I get it, but like at the same time, that's not good either. But people are desperate. You're working every day of your life, two jobs each, away from your children constantly, just to put a home over their head, and then have somebody bust into your place that you've been doing that for. Like that's a lot. That's a lot. So people are gonna want to take revenge. I mean, it is what it is. Like I would love to say don't, and we should all just be a certain way, but that's only for some of us. Like some people don't think the same. So
Yeah.
you can't fix that. Yeah. So it's a hard situation in general. But
Yeah, it is.
I definitely think that, people need to look more into the Kassar Empire, these families that you're talking about.
Hmm.
Do you know the name, like last names, or is it all scattered?
It's
No.
all scattered.
Okay. Because I think people really need to look into Khazarian stuff. Like, don't shut down. Go look it up. They're not the Jewish people that you're thinking of. I
Right.
promise you, they're not. They're not the Jewish people of Adam. They're not. So,
They'll say that the Khazarian thing is just like bullshit, but it's not. I mean, there's a 12th century book written called the Kuzari, written by a rabbi, on how it was a book written on how awesome Judaism is. We're so awesome, we got the Khazar king to convert his whole kingdom, right? So we have the documented written record of it, and they'll deny it to this very day.
well, and even Sabbatai Sevi went around and said, yeah, we have to do as bad of things as we can do to bring about this end of the world. And,
Hmm.
we've got this other guy, I can't remember who he was, but it's a rabbi saying that Star of David has nothing to do with Jewish people, and I won't wear it. It has nothing to do with us. Like he was adamant. It wasn't that long ago, like maybe
Right.
100 years. Like he was super popular, and he tried to tell the Jewish people, like, this isn't what you think. Like you can't identify with this. It's a bad thing, basically. And even their own rabbi, they were like, get out of here, bro. I don't know. I don't know what we can do if he couldn't do it. I mean, that's going to be rough, but people do need to look into this Kusari, if you guys can
Mhm.
find that, or these Kasarian families, because I've studied this enough to know there has been a huge impact, and Zionism is more your problem, but they look nice and probably are the nicest people ever. So people don't want to look at that. They're white collar crime,
Right.
if anything. So yeah. Any last words on anything, or like with Permindex, any of that? I don't
Permindex
know.
is like a ground zero for like the orders. And that connects to everybody. That's where everybody, if people are interested, Permindex is really like ground zero for the assassination planning.
Yes.
Um,
All the different people on it, Clay Shaw being one.
mhm.
But if you look at them, they're a bag of eggs that don't match. They're like mobsters and a president and, like all
Mhm.
this weird stuff. And then Clay Shaw. And you're
Right.
just sitting there like, what? Why is this a thing? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Clay Shaw was a real important guy. They kind of downplay his importance. But if you are personally being picked by guys like Dulles and Angleton to be on an international board overseeing assassinations, you're a somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yep.
a somebody for sure.
Yep. He's up there with, like, I mean, literal big time mobsters, but also presidents of countries.
Yeah.
Like, and let alone the attorney for who was it? The big family that's like super old money. I can't remember
Oh,
their
the
name.
Rothschilds or
It's something like that. It's another one, but I was like, oh my gosh,
well, it's
what?
funny because the
Yeah.
Rothschilds were not directly involved with Permindex, but they were directly involved with Centro Mundial Comercial, which was the Permindex sub company.
Right.
Louis Bloomfield was the lawyer in Montreal. He was the family lawyer for the Rothschilds, and
Oh
he was
wow.
he was directly involved with Centro Mundial Comercial.
Yeah, these people do not fit together. Like when you guys look at it, you'll look at it and see the same thing we're looking at and go, "Wait a minute, but why?" But I don't get it. And that was kind of my thoughts on it, but Roy Cohn sure does come up. Not to mention the fact, Mary Carter Paint Company, that one's a fun one to go down to get to Resorts International to get straight to our president today. So,
Hmm.
people don't love to hear that because they have their idols, but I don't. I I just think we shouldn't have that, because I promise you, they're just men, and rich, rich, rich men. They don't care. They don't care about you.
Yeah,
They don't care about your little problems. They don't care about your little family, your little struggle. Like, no, they care about their money. That's what they
yeah,
care about. And I think you're right. Family ties to that is a big part of that. So, yeah, it's strange. Wild, wild. Well, one more time, let everybody know where your book is and where they can get it and
sure.
all about you.
CoryHughes.org has all my links. My book, A Warning from History, is the book to get, really. My new Oswald book is one of a first of a series, but you got to get through A Warning from History first before you get to Oswald. Oswald is the ultimate rabbit hole of all time. And so you got to, yeah, you can't read that one first because you'll be confused by the time you go back.
You'll be sitting here trying to play connect the dots. You'll need thousands of rolls of red string if you try to play that game. It's not a fun game to play, that is for sure. Well, Cory, I sure have appreciated all the time and information you've given me today. I know you've probably spent thousands upon thousands of hours researching all this stuff. So you guys check out his podcast as well. He didn't just write a book, he does a podcast on all of this, and World War II one as well,
Yep.
right?
Bloodyhistory.substack.com is my World War II stuff.
Very cool. Well, all the links will be in the show notes. So check him out, you guys, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.